So, what's the plus about the H3 Plus? Let's take a look. One of my favorite 5-watt ham HTs is the Tidradio H3. It's got all the normal features you'd find in a ham HT, plus it was one of the first HTs that used Bluetooth to connect to a smartphone app for programming. I also like the H3's small size. It's noticeably smaller than most 5-watt HTs like its big brother, the H8. This allows you to easily put it in your pocket or clip it to your belt without the extra bulk of a larger radio. Before we go any further, I need to let you know that Tidradio provided this radio and I've been working with it for a month or two. This includes upgrading it to the latest firmware. As I always appreciate the opportunity to review new products, please know that whether the vendor provided it or I purchased it myself, the review is my honest opinion. Now, here's a quick overview of the highlights. As shown in the display, the H3 Plus has a broad receive capability and 3 ham transmit bands. These include the 2-meter, 1.25 meter, and 70 centimeter bands. The additional receive bands include 174 to 350 megahertz, 350 to 400 megahertz, 50 to 76 megahertz, 76 to 108 megahertz, or the FM broadcast band, 108 to 136 megahertz with AM modulation for airband reception, and 470 to 600 megahertz. The H3 Plus also receives NOAA weather channels, just like the H3. The other things that haven't changed from the H3 are that it's USB chargeable, has a wireless frequency copy, and dual receive capability with a sync menu item that allows you to change up the very nice LED display. It also interacts with the ODMaster app and website, which allows wireless programming and online storage of radio configuration files. Now, for some of the differences. One thing I really like is the improved menu system. Unlike the original H3, the H3 Plus divides its menus into categories, which makes accessing specific menu items a bit quicker as they're grouped according to function. The H3 Plus also has the ability to accept firmware updates. This is particularly helpful when folks like Tidradio work to implement user suggestions and fix previously undetected bugs. You're not stuck with an out-of-date device just because it can't be upgraded. The biggest difference between the H3 Plus and the H3 is its expanded Bluetooth capabilities. These include the ability to interact with a broader selection of Bluetooth devices such as headsets and earbuds. You can also configure the radio to pair with your phone to make and receive phone calls, act as a wireless speaker, and interact with the ODMaster app to establish groups for what is essentially a wireless repeater or bulletin board system, where members can use the radio or their phones to post audio clips and photos to other group members. I'll link to another YouTuber's video on the end card that does a good job of demonstrating this function. Let's take a look at what comes in the box. So here's the box that the Tidradio H3 Plus comes in. This is the box for the dual set. So there are 2 radios and 2 of everything that I'm about to show you here in this box. So let's take a look at what we're going to get. So there are 2 ways to charge the H3. Like its predecessor, the standard H3, it comes with a little wall wart with a USB output there, the USB-A, and then a charge cable with the USB-A on one side and the USB-C on the other. This one is designed to charge the battery directly. There is no desktop charger that comes with this kit. The other things that you're used to seeing with this little radio is a lanyard to loop around the radio and around your wrist to give you a little more security when you're out using it, and then the belt clip here. And I've left it in the package because the belt clip screws are here in the package, not in the radio, and they're pretty small little screws, and I don't want to lose them. So the radio comes with an owner's manual. It's labeled the TD-H3, and I think there's some things about the H3 Plus that are not reflected in the manual that I got. This is an early edition, and so we'll take a look at what may show up on their website or with what ships when they release this here in just a few days. But the manual is typical of what you've seen. It's got a list of all of the basic safety warnings, displays, how the icons on the screen are displayed, all of that good stuff here. And then the last thing you're used to seeing when you get a radio like this is the antenna. It's got a knurled end to give it some strength down here. As you can see, it's got the female or socket side here on the antenna. So if you're thinking about a third-party antenna, you'll want a third party with the female side. And then it's the typical Tidradio antenna that's a little bit longer than a standard rubber ducky, but with a great deal more flexibility. And so this is the antenna that comes with it. So here's the radio itself, and as you can see, it's a dead ringer for the previous version of the H3. It's a really cute little radio. It fits well in your hand if you like these small compact radios. This is, one of the leaders in the group. I was recently at a ham radio camp out, and I think about everybody in the group I was camping with had an H3. So clearly it's a popular radio. One of the things that we've got to do, it seems like it's a rule on YouTube, is to pull off the screen protector. We've got that off, and so we'll be ready to continue with the tour. Now, we've got the buttons here on the radio where we can control. We've got the Bluetooth and menu button here. We've got the exit and the VFO versus channel button here, up-down buttons here, and then the numbers, of course, there. The microphone is a little dot above the O in Tidradio, and then the speaker is behind this little grill. When we go over here, we've got a push-to-talk. We've got a side key number 1 and a side key number 2 with some programmability there to customize the radio to what it is you want to do. On the back, we've got the radio. You can see that the belt clip screws into the battery, not into the radio. And then the indicator for charging is right here, and then the USB-C connector is right there. So this will flash depending upon the charge status, and then there's the little release switch for our radio right there. On this side, we've got the typical K1 connector behind a little rubber slot, and we also have the USB-C that we're going to be using for programming here, charging at the bottom, programming up here. And so we've got then the 2.5 and 3.5 millimeter holes for the K1 type connector if you're using, say, a hand mic that is wired. And then across the top, we've got the typical stuff. One of the things I like about the H3 is got two little status LEDs right here. And so it'll show a receive green and transmit red. And because we've got a dual watch capability where we can listen to two different channels at the same time, it gives us an indicator of if there's something going on one of the channels that we have selected. We've got an LED right here for a flashlight. There's the loop for the lanyard. And then we've got the SMA with the male side or the plug side right here for the antenna. Now, let's take a quick power-on tour where I'll show you the new menu system and the really nice display screen. So when we turn the radio on, it's where we start to see some of the differences in the H3 Plus. So here I've got my H3, it's the green one, and you can see it's pretty much the same, the little bit of difference in the molding right here, but other than that, the radio is the same size, antennas are on the same side, and so forth. But when you turn it on, we're going to notice some differences. So let me turn this radio on. I'm going to put it up near the microphone so you can hear one of the differences right away.
Welcome.
And now we'll turn this radio on and put it up by the microphone.
Welcome.
So there's a different voice, or at least a better timbre to the voice, still female. The little charm or chime is different when it comes on, but then as you can see, when we turn the radio on, a lot of what we see here is the same. So with the radios on, we can see that the displays are pretty much the same. We've got the SSID across the top, the battery indicator, the antenna, the high power, wideband, and the other things that are in the owner's manual for the H3. The channel or VFO mode is there, and so forth. This one you can see the little indicator for Bluetooth is on. This one I haven't turned it on yet. And then we've got the channels and the frequencies here in those displays within the boxes, and those are things that we've programmed. I haven't done any programming on the new radio yet, so this is just what is coming out of the box. But now let's focus on the H3 Plus. So here when we go into the menu, we're going to see that the menu, instead of being like 55 items, has been subdivided. And so the various radio settings are here, and we can go through them with our up and down. So squelch and step and vox and all that stuff is there. You select the items by pressing menu again. In this case, the timeout timer is 60 seconds. That's fine. I'll select that. It tells me it's okay. And then I can press the exit button to get out of this. And we can see the various other things, the ever popular Roger beep, keypad beeps, locks, and so forth. We back up another step. We can go into program channels. We can go down there. And this makes it really easy for us to program a new channel from the radio without having to scroll through dozens of different menus to get to it. Now, the number of menus might not change, but they're all grouped together, which is really kind of cool. So that makes programming the radio pretty easy from the radio itself. And then when you add to the ease of programming through the ODMaster app, it makes for a very easy programming experience. Now, obviously, if you're going to put lots and lots of programs in or lots and lots of channels in, you're going to want to use the CPS either through the ODMaster webpage or some other CPS that might become available for this that I haven't stumbled across yet. So we'll exit out of this one. We also can go down here then to radio info, and we see that the version information is there. And it's the radio ID is 123. That's for signaling. The radio alias is the Tidradio H3 Plus. If we go down, we can see it's firmware and hardware and all of that good stuff. We go down to scan, and we get into the scan menu, and then we can go with our scan mode, and that's time or carrier or end. And then we can seek DCS instead of any channel. We can select the time that it lingers on the channel that it's selected, the frequencies and so forth. So let's go to that frequency one, enter it. And so channel 1, frequency and code, it gives us that information. So if we're scanning for that, we'll have that information. I'm going to back out of that. I'm not a big scan guy, but there are a lot of variables here in the scan menu for you to choose from. So let's turn Bluetooth on and see if some of these things open up. So we'll get out of the menu, a long press on Bluetooth. You can see that Bluetooth turns on, the little Bluetooth icon comes on, and that was about 4 seconds. So it's a little bit longer than the typical long press. We'll go into menu. We'll go back down to Bluetooth. Open that submenu. Go down to Bluetooth mode, select that, and we can be either a receiver or an emitter, so that's interesting. Our Bluetooth name is what we saw before, the TD-H3 Plus 1912. We go into pairing. We can either see if it's pairable or paired. The ODMaster PTT. We've talked about that already. Transmit, Bluetooth internal mic. We'll see what we get here. We can turn it off or on. And the same thing with the speaker. We can set mic gain, level 1 through, let's see, level 5. So there's a lot of things that we can do with Bluetooth, and the added Bluetooth capability in the H3 Plus is one of the things that makes it a plus. If you're familiar with the other menu items in the H3, these are the same. They're just grouped together in a very handy way. So things like breathe, For example, you can set the breathe, which allows these lights to flash every few seconds to remind you that you have the radio on, especially if you decide to turn the screen off after, 5 or 10 seconds, which again is one of those menu items with which you can do that. And so that's a quick power on tour of the H3 Plus. Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already. And please consider clicking the join button below the video to learn more about becoming a channel member, or click the thanks button to make a one-time contribution to support what we do here. I really appreciate it. Now, back to the review. In terms of programming the H3 Plus, there's not a lot different from the H3 when using the ODMaster environment. Here's a quick look at the app in action. To start, we're going to connect to our Bluetooth. We're going to click up here. We see we've got the H3 BLE. We're going to turn that on. We're going to go back here and we're going to select model. It's a Tidradio. And the H3 Plus is near the bottom of the list. And we can see we're connected. So at this point, I would connect read and read from the radio. And then I'm going to move to program and settings. And so in the program setting here, I'll have what I've got on the radio. And so you can see here when I click on channel, if I click the channel, I get this display that shows me where I have channels written and where I have open channels. And so here in the functions, I can go through all the things that I have, squelch, voice prompt, and so forth. Here in the app, I can program my various side keys and do all the other things, turn the sync on and off and so forth. And so here I'm going to look at my channels. I've got channel 1, I've got the VHF call, I've got all the options for it. I could set up CTCS codes if it was a repeater and so forth. If I go back to channel here, I can see that I've got a blank channel on channel 10. So I'm going to remember that. And so I'm going to go back a step. I'm going to go to my repeater list. And this will come up with a bunch of the repeaters that are close by. And so here's one that's about 5 miles away. And if I wanted to add that, I could do that. I'm going to add it to that blank channel 10. I'm going to confirm. And then I'm going to import. So now when I go here to channel 10, you can see the little banner on the corner is now green, and it shows that I've got the repeater. So I've got the input and output channels there. I've got the CTCSS code all imported in there. So you can see that programming the radio using the ODMaster app is quite easy. Now, if I go down here to talk, this is where I'm going to get into my groups and use some of that Bluetooth capability. I'm going to refer you to another video instead of going through that right here. And then I've got my account, and then I can go back to programming the radio. And then when I'm done with the programming, I can come back here and write that to the radio, or I can save it to the phone where I can access it via this ODMaster app. The H3's power output is pretty respectable for a radio in the 5-watt class. Here's a quick look at the radio on the power meter. So let's check out the power output for the H3 Plus. I'm transmitting into my MFJ 874. I'm reading this on the second arc from the bottom. It's a 5-watt radio. So I'm expecting about 5 watts. We'll see. We're measuring power and we're transmitting into a dummy load. So here we are on the 2-meter band high power. So we got about 4.1, 4.0 on high power. Let's change this down to the other setting. So we're on low power now, and we'll transmit the same frequency in the 2-meter band. So it comes up at about 2.1. So those are power settings here in 2 meters. Let's switch to the 440 band and see what we get up there. So here we're on high power, 70 centimeters, and let's see what we get. Right again, 4.0, 4.1 watts on high power. We'll change this to low power and see what we get. So we're on low power now. And we get about 2.5 watts, 2.6 watts on low power. So those are the power output settings for the H3 Plus, and they're pretty respectable for a radio in this price range, anticipating 5 watts, and we're in the neighborhood. I'm also always interested in a new radio signal purity. Budget class radios are notoriously noisy. Let's take a look at the H3 Plus and see how it does. Now keep in mind the standard is for 5-watt radios below 225 megahertz is that any harmonics be 40 dB below, and that any of the harmonics be 25 microwatts or less. And so the blue line on this display represents the 25 microwatts. I've got this set for 146.520, so a 2-meter test. And so let's take a look. You can see here I've got 40 dB of external attenuation to avoid damaging my Tiny SA Ultra. And so the radio is ready to go. So let's press to talk and see what we get here. We're going to let this go through the scan a couple of times to settle down. And you can see I've got some harmonics showing up down there, but all of them are 40 dB below the fundamental here, number 1, and all of them are below that 16.02 that represents that 25 microwatts. And so as I look at this here, yeah, they're all below, they're all below 40. And so the worst one is number 4 out here, and it's right at 40. So we'll declare this a pass, a clean radio. Again, you'd expect it for a higher price radio, and I'm really glad to see that it is. Here's a quick audio test I did outside on my back patio.
Test. Receive test on the H3 Plus. Test. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Test. Test. Transmit test on the H3 Plus. Test. 1, 2, 3.
So now for some closing comments. For me, the improved Bluetooth features and group chat functions are pretty cool. I'm just not sure how much I'd actually use them. I learned a long time ago, however, not to assume my own use cases are universal. If you're big into Bluetooth, this radio has some very impressive capabilities. If you like interacting with a group of friends or like the very clever interface with the smartphone, you might find the social media message sharing features very appealing as well. To be sure, they're very unique in today's market. As I'm recording this, the political environment with various trade-related fees makes determining price kind of hard. The H3 Plus is not available on Amazon, but is available on the Tidradio website. Hopefully this trade kerfuffle will be over soon and things will get back to normal. I've got an affiliate link to Tidradio's website in the description below. I hope you found this video helpful. As mentioned earlier, check out this video on the repeater function of the H3 Plus. As always, thanks for watching, and 73.